You might have seen the news story recently about the new AC38 class rules and the technical regulations that have been published. Normally, I'd be right into that, geeking out for all it's worth. But that's not the big story. Instead, the America's Cup is on the verge of a very big, some might say historic change. That's all very well, but has the America's Cup stalled? It's not often that the Kiwis miss a deadline. In fact, they've been justifiably proud of having hit all the key dates in what's been a very busy Cup tenure so far. But avid followers will know that this week there was one date that wasn't met. And while it lies below the radar for most, the document that was due to be signed on the 9th of September is a very important one. Because whilst we've seen the AC38 protocol that sets out the next America's Cup, the biggest and most significant change to the next Cup cycle and beyond is the way in which it'll be run. And I suspect it's going to be controversial. In simple terms, for previous Cup cycles, the defenders arrange the Cup match itself, sorting the venue and finding the funds to do it. The Challenger of Record represents any other challengers that might want a crack at the Cup and organises a series of races to decide who will get to go to the match. In recent Cups, those responsibilities have started to merge. Last time around, the Kiwis organised pretty much the whole gig, with the help from the Brits, who were the Challengers of Record. This time, the responsibilities and funding will come down to all the competing teams, including the defender. They've called this the America's Cup Partnership, the ACP. It's an interesting idea, and one that is hoped that will provide some structure and certainty to this and future America's Cups. You can see their point, especially given how much progress SailGP appears to be making recently, with a busy and regular schedule of events stretching way into the distance. Sponsors and backers like that kind of talk, and it shows. But of course, SailGP and the Cup are two very different beasts. SailGP is essentially owned and run by one organisation, while the whole point of the 174-year-old America's Cup is that it can never be owned.
For the America's Cup.
And it's that, albeit simplified fact, that makes the long-term future for the Cup so difficult to pin down. On the other hand, many will argue that it's this aspect, defined by the deed of gift, that is the reason why the Cup has endured for longer than any other international trophy, and that changing the basic structure will ultimately destroy it. It's also been believed that the deed of gift couldn't be changed without the consent of the original trustees, and given that none of them are with us anymore, changing the document couldn't be done. But the interesting point right now is that it seems to be the partnership agreement, the ACP, that's proving hard to achieve. In many ways, that's not surprising. The principle may be clear, but once you start digging into the detail, it's a minefield. Aside from the simple negotiation between teams, the financial input, presumably, would be pretty hefty for all. So how do you protect a team's investment? How do you ensure that teams abide by the ACP? And what happens when a team wins and then decides to pay a fine and ditch the partnership agreement? And what about the tax issues? I bet that's not simple. What happens if the Cup receives a late entry? When you start thinking about it, the list grows and grows. So perhaps it's no surprise that signing is taking longer than might have been expected. Grant Dalton hinted that this might be the case a few weeks ago when the new protocol was announced. From what I'm hearing, it sounds and feels like there's an agreement between the parties involved and that a deal will be signed, and soon, because the schedule for AC38 is pretty tight. A series of preliminary regattas for next year, yes, next year, in AC40s, then the Cup in Naples in 2027 in the big boats. The class and technical rules have just been released, which in a way helps to emphasise that teams need to be sailing pretty much now. But there lies the big question. What teams are we talking about? Who is actually going to be in for the next Cup? The answer is far from clear, but at this stage I think we might see two teams exit the stage. Alinghi has been silent for weeks, months even, and from what I'm hearing, they're not happy with how things are panning out. In fact, it sounds like their boss is pretty hacked off. American Magic don't seem too enthusiastic either. All we've seen so far is a short statement saying that they were evaluating whether the agreements provide a viable foundation for American Magic to participate in the 38th America's Cup. Not exactly a ringing endorsement. So who does that leave? Well, the British, of course, but currently under their team name Athena Racing. Luna Rossa, with Naples as a venue, it's hard to imagine them not being there. And the French also look pretty certain. Plus, it sounds like there may be a new team coming, a second Italian challenger. If that happens, 4 challengers, 1 down from last time. It's tempting to get drawn into a debate on how many is the right number of challengers. But from the Challenger of Records point of view, if the ultimate goal is still to win the America's Cup, more challengers means more teams to beat and more to organise. In short, a bigger headache. And while I'm sure they'll never put it like that, that's what it comes down to. But returning to the hot topics, the America's Cup partnership sounds like it's going to happen. And why do I think that? Because it sounds like the modification to the deed of gift is on its way, and that is very rare. Here, the particularly interesting thing to note is that it sounds like it has the full support of the New York Yacht Club, whose Commodore J. Cross is closely involved. That alone is going to turn quite a few heads. So while it might just sound like politics and paperwork, and you might not be in favour of the outcome, a big change to the America's Cup, it's on its way. So has the America's Cup stalled? It might look like it on the outside, but behind the scenes, they are working at a frantic pace. Italian engineering company Cariboni are used to dealing with large, ambitious projects, but the radical new Maxi Magic Carpet E took them onto a completely new level. Because while the list of equipment that was required was long and complex, the engineering of a keel that cants, lifts and swings aft was a major engineering exercise. It took 4 months just to machine the titanium cassette that supports the keel fin and provides the articulation. It's a work of art in itself. But advanced engineering is a field that the company knows well, especially when it comes to hydraulic systems. From TP52s to Maxis, Imoccas, America's Cup boats and super yachts, there's little they haven't produced kit for. With a total of 31 hydraulic rams, along with headsail furlers and other equipment, Magic Carpet E was one of the biggest and most sophisticated projects they've supplied, and a project that's widely acknowledged to have raised the bar in a part of the sport that's already technically advanced. If you were to imagine an aluminium exploration yacht, I'm pretty sure I know what you might have in mind. But that's just what Pure Yachts wanted to avoid. Instead, their 42-footer was designed to be as good-looking as she is tough. She's designed to be extremely reliable, with an ice-class, go-anywhere hull and an impressive performance under power and sail. She also needed to be easy to sail short-handed and practical, which means she's got a 3.3 metre lifting keel that can reduce the draft to just 1.2 metres. Weight was also a big factor, and the Pure 42 is 9.8 tonnes, where the fin and bulb keel is 3.3 tonnes. A warm, welcoming interior was also required. Here, the aluminium hull construction made it easier for the designers to keep the weight down through the use of foam cord panels when it came to the interior. The Pure 42 has also been nominated for the European Yacht of the Year Awards.